Joanna Staten lived in a world where velvet ropes were never needed. Every door opened for her. Born into unimaginable wealth and raised among the elite, Joanna never once questioned the comforts around her. Every day was a parade of spa treatments, fine dining, and extravagant shopping trips. Her wardrobe could clothe a small village, and yet she never wore the same outfit twice. She was used to getting her way, often barking orders at anyone who dared speak without a silver spoon in their mouth. Married to Grant Staten III, an equally entitled and aloof millionaire, Joanna floated through life with a sense of superiority that made her both admired and feared. To her, waiters were invisible, carpenters were beneath her, and small-town America? That didn't even exist in her universe. But all empires tremble eventually. On a luxurious cruise aboard their private yacht off the coast of Oregon, something mundane disrupted the fantasy: a mechanical failure. The yacht, a multi-million-dollar floating palace, sputtered to a halt just off a sleepy coastal town called Elk Cove. It was a place that couldn't have been further from Joanna's glossy lifestyle. No five-star resorts, no personal stylists, just clam shacks, rain-soaked streets, and blue-collar grit. The yacht crew called for a local carpenter to fix the custom closet in Joanna's stateroom. Enter Dean Prophet, a rough-edged, hard-working single father who immediately found himself the target of Joanna's venom. "You're late," she said, without looking up from her manicure. "Yeah, I'm Dean Prophet," he replied, wiping sawdust from his hands. "You're the emergency, I guess?" She laughed coldly. "Try not to touch anything with those hands." Dean bit his tongue and got to work. Over the next few hours, Dean measured, cut, and installed custom oak shelving, just as ordered. But when he returned the next day to collect his payment, Joanna dismissed him like a common thief. "This is oak," she sneered. "I asked for cedar." "You never mentioned cedar," Dean shot back, frustration bubbling over. "Well, I wanted cedar. I'm not paying for your mistake." Dean tried reason. Joanna doubled down. The engine of the yacht roared back to life, and the crew prepared to leave port. As the argument escalated, Joanna turned her back on Dean, dismissing him like yesterday's news. The yacht pulled away slowly, leaving a trail of entitlement behind. But destiny wasn't done with Joanna Staten. That night, during a particularly stormy dinner, she dropped her wedding ring, a gaudy, diamond-encrusted symbol of her self-worth, through the slats of the upper deck. Determined to retrieve it herself, she leaned too far over the rail. With a sudden shriek and a splash, Joanna vanished into the cold Pacific waters below. Sometime after midnight, she was pulled from the ocean by a passing garbage barge. Half-conscious, soaking wet, and babbling nonsense, she was rushed to a local hospital. There, she was diagnosed with a serious case of amnesia. No ID, no memory, no name. The only thing she had was her attitude, and even that was fractured. Local news stations picked up the story of the mystery woman from the sea, but when Grant Staten III got the call, he saw an escape hatch, not a rescue mission. Tired of Joanna's constant criticism and controlling behavior, he lied to the hospital. "I don't know this woman," he said flatly. He left her there. No yacht, no help. Just a nameless, forgotten woman in a stranger's hospital gown. Dean, meanwhile, was nursing both a bruised ego and an unpaid invoice. When he saw Joanna's face on the local news broadcast, something clicked. He saw an opportunity, not just for payback, but for help. Dean was a widower struggling to raise 4 unruly boys. The house was in chaos. Homework, laundry, discipline. It was all too much for one man. So he came up with a plan so outrageous it might just work. He walked into the hospital with an air of confidence. "That's my wife," he told the nurse. "Her name?" "Annie," he said, inventing a life for her on the spot. Skeptical, the hospital asked for proof. Dean, ever the improviser, described a tiny strawberry-shaped birthmark on her lower back. The nurse nodded. "She has one." Within hours, Joanna, now known as Annie Prophet, was discharged into Dean's custody. She had no idea what was coming. The moment they pulled into the muddy driveway of Dean's cluttered, chaotic home, Annie was shell-shocked. She stepped over rusted bikes, discarded tools, and barking dogs just to reach the front door. The house smelled like wet socks and peanut butter. Inside, 4 wild boys, Greg, Charlie, Travis, and Joey, froze mid-pillow fight to stare at the new Mom. "Hi, Mom," one of them said with a smirk. Joanna's jaw dropped. "They're not mine." Dean laughed awkwardly. "You always say that." The reality hit hard. Dean handed her a list of chores and a laundry basket. "Welcome home." Joanna, still unsure of her identity, had no choice but to adapt, or at least try. At first, every moment felt like punishment. Joanna, once waited on hand and foot, now had to wake up early, cook breakfast, pack lunches, and herd 4 boys out the door. She didn't even know how to fry an egg, let alone manage a household. The dogs barked constantly, the ceiling leaked, and nothing ever seemed clean. But little by little, something began to shift. She began remembering not her past, but how to exist without luxury, how to problem solve, how to be resourceful. She figured out how to light the stove, how to scrub the tub, and how to calm a child throwing a tantrum. In the quiet moments, sweeping floors or folding laundry, she started to feel a kind of peace she'd never known. Still, questions lingered. Who was she? And why did the life Dean described feel so alien, yet oddly comforting? As the days passed, Joanna began to build routines in her new life. Mornings became slightly less chaotic. She even started waking up before the boys to get breakfast going, burning it less often. The house, though far from spotless, was starting to show signs of order. There were fewer socks in the fridge, fewer Lego booby traps on the stairs, and fewer complaints about cold cereal. Dean, watching from the sidelines, couldn't believe what he was seeing. The woman who once screamed at him over closet wood types was now yelling at Greg to pick up his socks. She was no longer a tyrant. She was a struggling, frustrated, but genuine presence in the house. Still, not everything was perfect. Late at night, Joanna would stare at herself in the bathroom mirror, studying her face like a stranger's. She didn't recognize the worn bathrobe or the exhausted woman staring back. Her dreams were filled with fragments, champagne flutes, piano music, velvet dresses, and she'd wake up with a haunting ache she couldn't explain. One night, she confronted Dean. "Why are there no pictures of me in this house?" Dean hesitated. "We lost everything in a move." "Everything?" He nodded. "Even our wedding photos." It was a shaky lie, but Joanna bought it, at least for the moment. Feeling guilty, Dean turned to his friend Billy. Together, they doctored an old wedding photo, pasting Joanna's face over Dean's late wife. The next morning, he handed it to Joanna like a sacred relic. She studied it. "I don't look happy." "You were, trust me." But the photo only deepened her confusion. She began to wonder who she had been, what kind of woman she used to be. Dean, improvising again, invented a past filled with tiny, believable details, like how she once worked at a fast food restaurant and was Employee of the Month. It was a small lie, but Joanna's eyes lit up. "I was." Dean smiled. "You wore the paper hat and everything." For the first time since she arrived, Joanna laughed. Not a polite chuckle, but a real, deep, joyful laugh that surprised even her. Something was changing. Not just in Joanna, but in Dean, too. Weeks passed. The boys began to treat Joanna with real affection. Not just the playful teasing they once used to test her. She earned it, by cleaning up their scraped knees, helping with homework, and staying up late to finish laundry they forgot to mention until bedtime. Dean, meanwhile, had been trying to land a new job. A developer was seeking someone to design a miniature golf course, and Dean pitched himself as the guy for the job. But he didn't have the polish or portfolio. Joanna surprised him by sketching out an entire themed concept, World Wonders Golf. Each hole based on a different iconic landmark, the Eiffel Tower, the pyramids, the Taj Mahal. Her design background, something even she had forgotten, kicked in with stunning clarity. The investors were impressed. Dean got the job. He looked at Joanna, overwhelmed. "You just saved my career." She smiled. I guess I've got a few useful skills after all. Dean nodded. You've got more than that. You've got heart. Dean didn't know how to say it, but he was falling for her. And worse, he was falling for a woman who, at her core, wasn't who he thought she was. He tried multiple times to confess the truth, but every time she smiled at him or helped his boys with their science projects, the words got stuck in his throat. One evening, Joanna surprised him with a birthday dinner. Candles, balloons, even a store-bought cake. They danced in the living room to music from an old radio. It was imperfect, offbeat, clumsy, but magical. That night, they kissed. Not out of obligation or manipulation, but from a place of genuine connection. As Joanna lay in his arms later, she whispered, "This feels like home." Dean's heart cracked. He knew what he had to do, but he couldn't bring himself to do it. The next day, while cleaning Dean's truck, Joanna stumbled upon something odd. A pair of silky, expensive panties embroidered with the initials JS. Her heart sank. Had Dean been cheating? Was there another woman? When she confronted him, Dean panicked. He blurted out half-truths and mumbled excuses, finally blaming his friend Billy. Joanna was furious, but somehow she couldn't stay mad. Billy played along, claiming the panties were part of a failed anniversary gift. Joanna didn't know what to believe, but she chose to trust her heart, and her heart believed Dean. Far away from Elk Cove, Grant Staten III was losing control. Joanna's mother had been pressuring him to find her daughter and restore order. Grant, tired of yacht parties and running from responsibility, decided to return. He sailed the yacht back toward the Oregon coast. When the limousine pulled up to Dean's house, Joanna saw Grant step out and her breath caught. "Hi, Grant," she said casually, but the name alone snapped something inside her. Her memory, dormant all this time, flooded back in an overwhelming rush. Faces, parties, money, Manhattan, her real identity. She was Joanna Staten, and she had been living a lie. As Joanna stood frozen in front of Grant, the memories cascaded through her mind like a broken dam. Her luxurious upbringing, her spoiled attitude, the yacht, the caviar, the way she had treated Dean. Her hand instinctively touched her wedding ring, the one she had dropped that fateful night. She turned slowly toward Dean, eyes wide and wounded. "My name is not Annie," she said softly, almost as if speaking to herself. "I'm Joanna Staten." Dean swallowed hard. His boys stood behind him, looking confused and anxious. Joanna looked around the yard that had become her home, the messy porch, the mismatched flower pots, the children's art taped to the walls. Everything suddenly felt distant. I don't belong here," she whispered. Dean nodded, broken. "I know." With that, she stepped into the limo with Grant, not because she wanted to, but because she felt she had to. The boys stood quietly, their faces masks of heartbreak as the car pulled away. Back aboard the yacht, Joanna tried to slip into her old life like a glove. But everything felt stiff, empty, and foreign. Her mother bombarded her with spa appointments and fashion advice. Grant acted like she was a prize he'd reclaimed. But Joanna felt like a stranger in her own world. At dinner, she couldn't stomach the gourmet dishes. The sparkling wine made her nauseous. She missed meatloaf, missed dog hair on the couch, missed laughter that wasn't rehearsed. Late at night, she sat with the ship's crew, listening to their stories, offering apologies to Andrew the butler and asking them about their lives. "You've changed, ma'am," Andrew said gently. "You're not the same woman who boarded this yacht months ago." "I hope not," she whispered. Back in Elk Cove, Dean was trying to move on. He cleaned the house, fed the boys, and pretended everything was fine. But every time he passed the closet Joanna had once criticized or saw her doodles on the fridge, the ache returned. Then, one morning, the unmistakable silhouette of the yacht appeared on the horizon. Joanna had had enough. Standing tall on the deck, she gave Andrew one last instruction. "Tell my mother I'll call her. Eventually. Then, with life jacket in hand, she jumped. The Coast Guard, bound by duty, had already stopped to rescue Dean, who had swum out toward the ship in a last-ditch effort to see her. When Joanna surfaced, gasping, she looked into Dean's eyes, tears streaming down her face. "You lied to me," she said, her voice trembling. "But you also gave me something no one else ever did. Purpose." Dean, wiping the salt from his eyes, whispered, "You're my Annie, and you always will be." They embraced as the sun broke through the Oregon clouds, warming the waves around them. Later, back at the house, the family reunited in full joy. The boys ran to her, yelling, laughing, hugging. Dean turned to Joanna. "What could I possibly give you? You already have everything." She smiled. "You could give me a little girl." And with that, they kissed. No longer strangers in disguise, but partners in a life they chose, not one they inherited.